Good morning, everybody in Europe. Good afternoon, everybody in China. Welcome to EU SME Center webinar series. Today we will talk about the utilization of special customs zones for importing products to China. Before we move to the topic itself, I would like to shortly introduce the facilities and of the webinar platform. So you can see on your screen a panel saying that you can ask and send a question to us. Please do it anytime during our webinar, and your question will be answered at the end during the Q&A session. Or if we will not manage due to the time pressure answer your question now, we will send you the reply via the email. First, for those who have joined our webinar for the first time, I would like to shortly introduce services of the EU SME Center in China. EU SME Center in China was EUSME in China was established 3 years ago, and it is a project funded by the European Union. This project is aimed to help small and medium-sized enterprises from Europe to import or invest to China. All our services are provided free of charge. In the Center, we have 4 departments: business development, legal and tax, standards and conformity, and HR and training. We are able to provide our services via the information and advice. We reply daily on the inquiries, publications, training. We provide trainings like this webinar, and we have several databases like service providers database, law database, or updated database of the exhibitions. We, in addition to the information and advice, we provide as well support services like hot desking. So in case you are here in Beijing for a business trip, you can use our offices and internet connection and desk and stay with us for a couple of days or weeks. And we as well organize matchmaking and networking events. So now to today's topic about the utilization of special customs zone for your business in China. Before I introduce our today's speaker, I would like to know a little bit about your background, which will help us to better target our presentation. So I will first launch our poll for today, and the question is about your experience of using special trade, special customs zones for importing goods generally. So our question to you is whether you have such experience in China, whether you have experience in other countries, or whether you have no experience at all. And I can see your votes coming here, so I give you a few more seconds. And I can see that majority of you, I'm closing the polls now, the majority of you don't have any experience with the special customs zones at all, and that 11% of you have such experience in China. I therefore believe that our today's webinar is well targeted, and that the information you will gain from this webinar will be very, very useful. So now I will introduce our today's speaker, Dr. Zhao, Dr. Deming Zhao. Dr. Zhao is a PRC licensed lawyer, and he is engaging in the corporate, commercial and litigation practices since 1993, so more than for 20 years. He is a leader lawyer in Holyven law firm Customs Trade and Practice Group, and he has wide experience in providing advice and consultation to the multinational companies on various questions related to the foreign trade, including tax advice and using bonded logistics model, customs supervision zones, and so on. Dr. Zhao has been several times appraised by the clients as the real expert on customs law and the practice, and he is one of the 20 leading lawyers in China, according to the Client Choice Survey. He is also arbitrator with China International Economic Trade and Arbitration Commission. So we are very happy and lucky to have him today here, and I will finally pass the floor to him. So welcome.
Thank you very much for your great introduction of me, and I really feel honored to be here to talk about the China-related matters. The task that I have from the EU SME Center is really to explain to you as a foreign company or European company how to do business in China without setting up any companies in China. And so the special customs zones become very, very important channel for your importation and we'll call it sales in China as well. Well, the topic will have 4 parts. Part 1, I will explain what are the special customs zones, and the topic 2, I will explain how, as a foreign company, you can use the special customs zones, right, to achieve your business, objectives in China. And thirdly, that in Shanghai, particularly, the Shanghai Free Trade Zone is a very, very popular topic now in China. But there are some characteristics which is quite special compared with other special customs zones. I will touch upon this topic later. And lastly, we talk about Uturn method, through Hong Kong, or we call it bonded logistic parks in China. Bonded logistic parks also one type of the special customs zones in China. And this kind of U-turn really the China exporter want to use to achieve the export tax rebate purpose. So we will talk about later as well. At the end of this presentation, something that we'll have a Q&A session, and you are welcome to raise any questions, and I will try my best to respond to them. Okay. Let's come to the first topic. What are the special customs zones in China? You can see that there are 5 categories of special customs zones. The first one is free trade zones, like the Shanghai Waigaoqiao Free Trade Zone, quite famous in China. And free trade zones, there are a lot of free trade zones in China. Majority of them really located, along the coastal area of China. Export processing zones, also some in China, also located close to the coastal areas. But this type of zones really have limited use to you, because within the zone, you only can do the manufacturing for the exporting purposes. And if you want to, later on, you really have the plan to get anything imported into China, very, very difficult. So, it seems to me that because majority of you really interested in selling into China, so I do not recommend you to use export processing zones for the, domestic sale purposes. Is the question? Okay, great. And the third category is bonded logistic park. And you can see from the name, logistic park, meaning that you can only store the bonded goods, the goods from overseas into the bonded logistic park. and you can do certain kind of simple processing activities within the park. And the fourth category is bounded ports. Really, you can do everything in the bounded ports, but the bounded ports is really have very limited area, right? So that normally you cannot have any substantial operation within the bounded ports. Comprehensive bounded zones. This is a new type of bounded zones, and we talk about comprehensive because the comprehensive meaning that they have a lot of functions already integrate the free trade zones and bounded logistic parks. So the comprehensive bounded zones are very, very useful zones for any manufacturing activity or distribution activity as well. And majority of the comprehensive bounded zones are located inland or further inland in China. Chongqing, for example, Xi'an, the city, have at least one comprehensive bounded zones. Okay. Why do you need to use special customs zones? Because they have a bounded, we call it benefits for you. And if you have any goods, sourced from overseas, you can temporarily store into the special customs zones on the bounded basis, meaning that you do not need to pay any China-related import duties and VAT, so that you can save a lot of money, right? And also you can sell the goods into the bounded areas, okay, also free of any import duty and VAT, right? And normally the import-export licenses will not applicable to the goods from overseas shipped into the special customs zones, right? With one exception, if the good is prohibited to be imported into China, well, obviously that you cannot get to the good into the special customs zones, okay? And even though those goods in the customs zones are duty-free, but they are all the time they under the customs supervision. So meaning that you really have to report to the customs upon the movement of goods, right? Each stage of development of the goods processing and storage whatsoever on a regular basis, right? And you also need a reason to get the goods into the bounded zone. The reason normally with two reasons. One reason is bounded logistics. You just temporarily store your goods, your own goods, and you store the goods in the logistic park, for example, or the free trade zone, okay, duty-free. So you can sign logistic agreements with a logistic company within the zone, so that you can get the goods shipped into the warehouse owned or operated by the logistic company in the zones, right? And another scenario is you probably sell your product from overseas into the zone, and the buyer is the manufacturer who conduct the processing trade, meaning that they will use the bounded goods within the zone and processing them and turn out to be a finished goods, and then exported them to you or to other buyers overseas. Okay, so without signing agreement within with a company within the zones, you cannot bring any goods into the zones. Okay, so that so your business model is very, very important. Whether it is bounded logistics only or you're really contracting with a processing trader within the zone.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Dr. Zhao, I have a question. You are mentioning here on the slides, and you said so as well, that the goods can be imported without any import duties or the VAT, called import taxes, and exempted from normal import-export licenses. I know it's not part of our presentation today, but what about the inspection and the quarantine inspection? Is it still needed when I export my product to the under the bonded zone?
Well, yes, the quarantine requirement is applicable within the zone. So for any goods shipped into the zone from overseas, for example, really subject to the quarantine and inspection regulations, depending upon the nature and category of the bonded goods. Okay, and China has very complex body of quarantine and inspection regulations, which is really a separate topic, which really probably worth a 1 hour talk. Okay. Yes.
Yeah. Thank you.
And we talk about special zones, and you need to bear in mind that you have 2 tiers of import clearance or custom clearance. The first tier clearance, we talk about the movement from overseas into the zones, right, the goods. And that you need to, the logistic company within the zone can, process the customs clearance procedure. And that procedure really a very simple filing procedure with the customs, okay, if you really want to store your goods into the zone, okay. So you need to have a company within the zone to handle the filing clearance with customs, which is quite easy. And if you later on you decide to sell your goods further into China outside the zone, and then you need to have a real importation clearance with customs, meaning that the buyer, the importer, your customer in China need to pay up the import duties and do the clearance with customs so that they will obtain a clearance certificate from the customs. So 2 tiers of clearance. 1 tier, the first tier we talk about from overseas into the zone, and secondly from the zone outside the zone. The second tier we talk about, this is really importation. And upon that time, the import duty and VAT will incur on the part of the importer, meaning your customer in China. Mm-hmm. Well, as far as the goods movement from the China, other parts of China into the zones is concerned, so domestic goods we call can be exported into the zones. You need to do the exporting clearance procedure with customs. Okay. Normally, there's no exporting duties for the exportation, with a few exceptions. Okay. But if you really exporting the goods from other parts of China into the zones, and the buyer within the zone is a processing trader or manufacturer doing the processing trade. And so in that case, the processing trade can buy those domestic goods and using a filing procedure very simply. And in that case, those domestic goods will not be treated as exported. So in theory, those kind of goods can be freely get out of the free trade zone into other parts of China using the similar filing procedure. Okay, different functions of the special customs zones. You can see that free trade zones almost you can do everything: import, international trade, bonded warehouse. Okay, and bonded warehouse you can store them on a bonded basis, and you also can do trade processing. You also can do the product display. Export processing zones, well, again, I do not recommend you use this one because it's quite a limited function for you, not applicable for your domestic sale purposes. Bonded logistics park is very important because those goods, if any domestic goods exported into the park will be treated as exportation, and then the Chinese exporter can claim VAT refund or VAT rebate benefit without the need for the goods to be left China, okay, get physically out of China. So that's quite important. But free trade zone does not have this function. If any goods entered from other part of China into a free trade zone, the exporter cannot enjoy the export VAT rebate benefit until the good is physically shipped outside of China. Bounded parks, yes, you almost can do everything, and comprehensive bounded zones, you can do everything. But to bear in mind that comprehensive bounded zones are located normally inland, further inland in China. This slide, we already talked about it, okay?
I would have,
yes.
If I may interrupt, I had one question. You are talking about processing, export processing, simple processing. It might be good to explain to our audience what the, for example, simple processing means and whether there are any other types of processing.
Simple processing is defined already by the customs regulations, and that simply means you do the repackaging, for example, you do the sourcing out activity, for example, and you probably do the labeling, right? Import labeling. So those kind of activity will be treated as simple processing. And the bonded logistics parks, they're quite concerned that you should not do any substantial processing. Okay, substantial processing sometimes means that you just had added value reach to 30%, for example, or other than that, there's no clear definition. So really depends upon the different opinions of the local authorities. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Thank you.
Welcome. If your company really interested selling goods into China, and then the free trade zones is an advantage, we talk about the import duties. So if the goods are after processing in China within the zone, and the comprising both the overseas sourced parts and domestic sourced parts, and in that case you do not need to pay the duties on the value of the finished goods. You only need to pay import duties based upon the value of the bonded parts you source from overseas. Okay, so that is the benefit for the company, and through that benefit, the local authorities really encourage the companies, right, to do the processing within the free trade zone, not in other zones, but also not in, for example, the bonded logistics park, and also through this kind of mechanism, they can encourage the local purchase of the parts into the zone. Okay. Okay, then we come to topic 2, how to use the special zones to achieve your business purposes. Well, the central issue that the majority of questions I have received really regarding how to do business in China without setting up a legal entity. Okay, they really talk about trading business in China. And my answer is yes, you can do that. And in order to do that, we really need to understand the special characteristics of the customs zones, right? So that you can utilize them for your business models in China. First of all, quite simply, the first point is all the special zones, all the the goods imported entered into the zone from overseas will be on a bonded basis. You do not need to pay any import duties and VAT. Okay, and secondly, that the goods into the zone can be further processed or manufactured, except in the bonded logistics parks, as I mentioned before, and can be sold also to Chinese domestic market. Of course, with the exception the we call the export processing zone, we do not use that because it's quite difficult for the domestic sale, right? So you can sell them, but you need to pay up the duties, the VAT upon importation, the second tier of clearance. Well, certainly that for almost all the special customs zones, except the free trade zone, the local supplier, if they export the domestic goods into the zone, they can enjoy the export VAT rebate benefit. And your locally sourced goods can also be put into the special zones, but they will be treated as export, right, purposes. And if you want to re-import, then you need to pay up import duties. And the goods between the zones can be, freely transported upon, clearance with customs. So you still retain the bonded status for the goods. Now we talk about the basic structure. How to do business in China without setting up a company in China. Well, assuming that you are a European company, a EU SME, your company, for example, you got a customer in China and you have a supplier in China as well. So firstly, you need to purchase from the domestic supplier. You need to sign agreement. And so also you need to have another agreement, sales agreement with the customer, obviously. And so the domestic supplier will supply the goods to you, but the delivery point will be within the special zones, either FTZ or BLP, right? And to a logistic company. And from the domestic supplier's perspective, this is exportation activity, and the domestic supplier will clear the goods with the China customs and obtain the export customs documents and use that documents that they can receive foreign exchange payment from your company as the price of the procurement, okay? And then the ownership, the title of goods will transfer to your company, even though the goods not leaving China, but within China in the free trade zone, for example, and stored with a logistic company. So that, of course, that you really need a logistic agreement, right, beforehand with a logistic company within the zone. And that company will store the goods for you. And then after you got a customer sales agreement, the customer will have instruction, right, to your company saying that they really need the goods, and then you just instruct this company to deliver the goods to customers, provided that the customer need to clear up the import duties and VAT procedure, meaning that they need to process goods with customs as well as paying up the import duty and VAT. So that is the whole general procedure of doing trading business in China using the logistic company in the free trade zone, or BLP. You may ask the question, why I need to have a logistic company within the free trade zone and BLP? Why? Why not that we just buy from the domestic supplier and then directly ship the goods from the domestic supplier, through the logistic company to the customer? Well, physically, yes. In practice, you can do that. You can deliver the goods to the customer. However, the customer cannot pay the foreign exchange money to your company because there's no importation clearance document. Okay, this is the China foreign exchange control matter. So without the importation clearance documents, the customer in China cannot pay any foreign exchange to your company. So we need to use the special customs zones, right, as a vehicle so that all the transactions, the purchase and the sale with customers will be treated as import-export, or export and import, and then you can pay and receive the foreign exchanges. Okay.
Just if I go to this slide, short explanation for us. What does it OEM contract? What does it mean?
OEM contract, assuming that domestic supplier is not simply a supplier, they also do the processing, manufacturing activities. So the domestic supplier will buy the parts, different parts from different other suppliers, and assemble those kind of parts into a finished goods. And then your company contracts with the domestic supplier, requesting them to attach your trademark, okay, to the finished goods and sell it to you. And from your perspective, this domestic supplier will be acting as OEM contractor, okay, or OEM supplier, okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, now we go to the the different examples. So now we talk about your really purchase from overseas and sell into China. Okay, we call it importation trade into China. This is quite straightforward. You can use the logistics company within the special trade zones, special customs zones, either a free trade zone or BLP, bonded logistic parks, okay, and use that logistics company as a distribution center, meaning that later on you can either re-export them to overseas buyers, or you can import them, further sell to domestic buyers.
So what is the advantage of this model comparing of not having this logistic company in the free trade zone? Why, I mean, I shall use this free trade zone and not to only export from abroad to the domestic buyer?
Well, certainly you really have the freedom to not use the logistics company within the zone and have direct sale from your company and to the domestic buyers. Yes. Well, using the logistic company within the custom zones, we really talk about the possibility that you want to have a distribution, a logistics center onshore in China, so that you will meet different clients' needs, customer needs, domestically or for the overseas sale. Okay, but if you talk about direct sale to domestic buyer without going through the logistic parks, then that is a one-off sale, right? You do not have any inventory in China. And this really depends upon the nature of your business, whether or not you really need a logistic inventory, right, in China or not. So that is a matter of business. The second example, we really talk about the buy from China and sell into China. We already touched upon this a little bit just now. Your company buying from the upstream supplier in China, and eventually will sell the same goods to the downstream buyers in China. So again, because of foreign exchange control problem, you really need to do the exportation, importation. And importation, the exportation meaning that your supplier will sell to you and deliver the goods into the BLP. And through this process, the supplier, after clearing the goods with the customs, and they can enjoy the export VAT rebate benefit, right? And after delivery of the goods within the logistic parks, and then they will finish their delivery obligation, and then they can entitled to receive a foreign exchange payment from your company, okay? And then upon the downstream buyer's instruction, you can instruct the logistic company within the zone to deliver the same goods to the buyers, okay? Of course, the buyer have to pay up the import duties and process the import custom clearance procedure. And the buyer, using the custom clearance document, they can pay to your company for the goods they bought from you.
Yeah.
Okay.
That sounds like an excellent model. I will be, as a European company, foreign company somewhere into Europe, I will be selling or buying and selling products from China into China without necessity to move the products out of the China and still enjoy the foreign exchange well, it's not enjoy, but use this this structure.
You're able to receive money.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just want to say for those who are afraid that these slides will not be available after we finish our webinar, we will put all the slides to our website, and you can later on download all of them and listen as well to the recordings.
Thank you. Let's move on. Okay, the third example. This example is rather complicated. We talk about a scenario that your company really planning to have a manufacturer to manufacture products for you. And after production, the manufacturer will sell the finished goods to your company, and then you will resell the same finished goods to the eventual buyer in China. Here is a downstream buyer. Okay, in order to do the manufacturing activity, the manufacturer will really need to source the raw material or the parts, components by themselves. Okay, or perhaps your company is interested providing those kind of parts, either from local source or from an overseas source. Okay, so we talk about the arrows in gray, and this really talk about the flow of the raw material or parts or components. One scenario, of course, that for you it's quite easy. You just buy the raw material from overseas and deliver to the manufacturer. Okay. The manufacturer is located within the free trade zone, for example. Okay, and in most of the cases, the manufacturer in the free trade zone will use a logistic company, right, to provide logistic services to them. So you only need to deliver the goods within the free trade zone into a warehouse, and upon that delivery, you just finish your obligation to deliver the raw material, right, and then you can receive the price for that. Foreign exchange. The manufacturer will pay in foreign exchange. Okay, that's quite easy, quite straightforward. But if as a foreign company, you also want to do the local sourcing services, okay, for the manufacturer, that's a bit complicated. Okay, first of all, you need to have a contract with the raw material supplier, we call domestic supplier. Okay. And normally, the domestic supplier want to enjoy the exportation tax rebate benefit, so they agree to sell to you. But however, they prefer to use the BIOP, what they call it, the bonded logistic products, to enjoy the benefits of the export VAT rebate. Okay. So firstly, after you sign contract with the raw material supplier, and then the delivery of the goods will be the BIOP warehouse, for example, or temporary in the warehouse. Upon delivery within the BIOP, then the local supplier cleared goods with customs, and they have exportation documents, and then they can just receive the foreign exchange payment from your company. Okay, this part is gone. Okay, and then the ownership transferred from the supplier to your company upon delivery within the BLP. And then you can use the logistics company to help you to transfer the goods from BLP to free trade zone, to deliver to the free trade zone, meaning to sell it the same to the manufacturer. Mm-hmm. Okay? And upon delivery to the logistics company here, your delivery obligation is discharged already. And then you are entitled to receive the foreign exchange money from manufacturer for the sale of the material.
Yeah, so it's a sale. I will sell what I bought to the manufacturer.
Yes. Okay. Well, in theory, yes, you can do that, right? And then the manufacturer will process all the raw material, and then to sell the finished goods to your company. Again, we'll deliver to the warehouse operated by the logistic company within the free trade zone. And then the finished goods will become your goods. Your companies have the ownership over the goods. And then you're entitled to sell to the local customer, the buyer, downstream buyer. And through this process, the buyer itself, of course, have the obligation to clear the goods, importation clearance with customs, and get the importation documents, custom documents, and use that document. They can pay you, okay, for the price of the finished goods. So that is in the ideal world, you can do that. Quite complicated, but you can do that.
What will happen, because from time to time we have as well the question that the European company ask, what if I establish in China subsidiary, and this subsidiary will assemble or manufacture for me the products? What would be the advantage or disadvantage? So in the slide, in this picture, what would happen, what would change if the manufacturer in the free trade zone is a subsidiary of the USME center? Would it help somehow to the company?
Well, you're really talking about on this slide, the manufacturer is a subsidiary of your company. Well, this subsidiary, the manufacturer, I suppose, they purely have the manufacturing function only, and your company really do the actual sales. So you really can utilize this model to achieve, the business objectives as you mentioned just now. Okay. Well, in practice, there are perhaps the manufacturer for you. You may very difficult for you to find a manufacturer within a free trade zone sometimes. Well, it's quite okay. You probably have a manufacturer outside the free trade zone, for example, and that manufacturer should have the ability to do we call it the processing trade business, meaning that the customer already approved that they can do the bonded manufacturing activity. And in that case, even though the manufacturer is located outside the free trade zone, but they still have the ability to get the goods from the free trade zone, for example, on the bonded basis, and they will use what we call a handbook issued by the customs authority, and use that handbook. They can get those goods into their warehouse on a bonded basis. But of course, they need to resell, re-export them, for example, so that they can clear up of the handbook with customs, right? So in this scenario, well, of course, they can perfectly use this scenario using the processing trade handbook, even though that the manufacturer is outside of the free trade zone.
Okay.
Well, certainly that you should bear in mind that customs clearance, you may notice that all the business models I discussed just now, the 3 examples, you do not have any obligation to do the customs clearance, okay? For the first tier of clearance, meaning from the overseas into the bonded zone, for example, that is the logistic company can do the filing procedure in their own name, but for your benefit, right? For your goods, okay. For the second tier of clearance, meaning from the zones outside the zones, that will be importation procedure, which should be done by the importer, meaning the end customer, not you, okay. So, but the only the element that you should watch out for is the cost, because there is a cost element. Your customer will be concerned about the cost, so that you really need to take that into consideration in importation VAT and importation duties into your pricing system. IP issue. If you have manufacturing for you and you attach your trademark, to the finished goods and sell to your end customer in China, you need to make sure that your trademark are well protected in China. So meaning that you need to pre-apply for the registration of trademarks in China. Otherwise, your trademark is not protectable in China.
Yeah, that's very important to mention. On this point, I would like to mention that if you have any questions related to the protection of the IP rights, our sister project, China IPR Helpdesk, is dealing on a daily basis with a question like this, and they would be happy to answer your inquiries.
Okay.
Yeah.
We talk about topic 3, the Shanghai Free Trade Zone. Shanghai Free Trade Zone, from the perspective of foreign companies, there's only two points or benefits that we can mention here. One, that we talk about first-tier clearance. Within the Shanghai Free Trade Zone, the first-tier clearance can be very, very speedy because the customs will enable you to do the pre-clearance filing the procedure, for example, before your goods actually arrived, right, in China. Okay, using the shipping manifest from the shipping company. Okay, and secondly, if you do the processing trade in China in the free trade zone, and you really have the option if you eventually sell the finished products into China. And then you have the option to pay the import duties and VAT, either on the basis of components or on the basis of the finished goods. Mm-hmm. And you decide. I think two elements will be quite important in the process of determine whether you will pay the import duty based upon components of finished products. One is the price, right? The finished price or finished goods price will be different from the components upon the first clearance, right? Mm-hmm. And secondly is the duty rate, import duty rate. And that relates to the classification or HS code for the components and finished goods as well.
Yeah. So if I would like to try compare the Shanghai Free Trade Zone to the other trade zones or other special custom zones, what is real advantage of the Shanghai Free Trade Zone in terms of the importing goods? It's a speed, yeah. As
I think only the speed, and other aspects will be almost the same.
Okay. Would it be somehow? Would it help for the foreign company for the exportation to China if they establish a subsidiary in the free trade zone? Would that be any really remarkable advantage comparing of just importing without any company?
Well, if you really can do the business without setting up a company in China, every company can choose this on the model. However, excuse me, if your business grew to a certain extent and you really need a lot of people in China, right, to help you, and those people need to be employed. And in China, if you do not have an onshore legal entity, it's difficult for you to have those kind of people, right, and to work for you. It's quite difficult, even though in theory you can use FESCO, for example, as a vehicle, but that is kind of problematic with the intermediary, right? And secondly, upon the business growth in China, you really need to manage your distribution channels. And if you do not have the people physically in China and to do that, then it's quite difficult. So it really depends upon different businesses, the level businesses in China, to decide whether or not you really need a company to recap the resale margin in China, or you simply just choosing simply buy and sell in China without remotely.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Welcome. The last issue, talk about Uturn through Hong Kong or BLP. Well, this is sounds irrelevant to your company as a foreign company because we really talk about Chinese company do exporting and enjoy the export VAT rebate benefit using the Uturn. Why there's a Hong Kong Uturn? Initially, there's no BLP Uturn, meaning that every shipment, export shipment, the seller cannot enjoy export VAT rebate unless and until the same shipment is get out of China. So in those old days, a lot of Chinese exporters really using the Hong Kong as the U-turn, okay, because Hong Kong is quite close to Guangdong provinces. So the ship is left Shanghai, for example, and to Hong Kong, and then that will be treated as export. And then the exporter can claim the VAT rebate benefits, okay. But now we already have an onshore within the China territory, for example, the bonded logistic parks. So upon entry into that park onshore, the Chinese exporter can enjoy the benefits already. So you really do not need to use Hong Kong, okay, as the U-turn, vehicle. Mm-hmm. U-turn meaning that you export to Hong Kong and then return the goods into China, either for further importation or for the bonded purposes. Okay, so all the benefit the previously Chinese exporter can enjoy through the Hong Kong U-turn can be enjoyed, in the same way if you use the BLP U-turn as well. Okay, but why in these days there's still Chinese companies using the Hong Kong U-turn, right? Because probably they are seeking some illegal benefits. Okay, they do the fraudulent declaration using the shipment to Hong Kong for many times. Okay, and then using the value to export value to claim the refund of VAT, which is quite illegal, and it seems to me the crime of cheating the tax authorities. Okay.
I see. Yeah. Thank you very much, Dr. Zhao. We have received really many. We have received about 20 questions. So I will give now Mr. Zhao to a little bit time to prepare for the questions. And I would like to tell you that in addition to the recording of this webinar, we will have we have a number of guidelines and the reports available on our websites, which are related to the foreign trade and to the foreign exchange. And these guidelines are freely downloadable. And you can as well send us any question or any inquiry, and we will get back to you within 7 days. So now we have about 5 to 10 minutes for the answering the questions. So I will give the word back to Dr. Zhao.
Thank you. The first question: which categories of goods are accepted and which are not in the special custom zones? Well, as long as the goods are not prohibited, so you're really fully entitled to get the goods into the special custom zones without limitation. Okay. However, if you're really doing the processing trade within the zone, certainly that you need to have a plant, have a business license approved, and also probably that Environmental Protection Bureau will see whether or not you really just comply with the environmental protection standards. The second question, you said that the goods from overseas can be stored in the special zones. Is there a certain time length period that the goods can stay there? Well, within the special zones, there's no time limit. But for the bonded warehouse outside the zones, there's a limit. Normally it's a half year or with attention to 1 year. Okay. Thirdly, the third question, sorry. Is that common practice in China to source from non-zones and export them to a special zone and then import back to China? Well, I don't think this is quite a common practice. Well, for the multinationals, because of a different business needs, sometimes they use this kind of model. Okay, why they do this? Because they want to capture the margin, right, for the local source, the parts. But it's quite rare, yes, in practice. And if you of course, if you do have an onshore entity to do the trading activity, well, it's much easier. Yes.
Yeah. Then a question which we have received as well, saying foreign company back in Europe, and they want to use a warehouse, or they would like to have their own warehouse in China, in bonded zones, or to rent, but they do not know what is the option. So can foreign company rent or buy a warehouse in the bonded zone?
Well, certainly yes. If you talk about logistic services, first of all, you need to set up a company within the zones, right? So that you can provide warehousing services. And you can rent a warehouse and operate them by yourself. Mm-hmm. You can buy a warehouse, operate by yourself. So you have different options.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Then we have a question which is related. If we can give a overview for the customs procedure, I don't think it's very complicated. And we will address it and in our exports guideline, which will be updated very soon. So to the lady who asked this question, we will send you the link to the update. Then there is a question which was probably asked during one of the slides with the pictures, and the question is: logistic company in this case will follow all documents procedure, right? And which name will be remitted in the documents?
Well, this is a broad question, and depending upon different scenarios. Okay, the logistics, for example, if they're helping your company as a foreign company to clear the goods, the first tier of clearance from overseas into the zone, and the logistics company will clear the goods, filing the goods in their own name. Mm-hmm. Okay, so so in the filing documents, that they will be the declaring entity. Okay, but if you talk about importation, food importation from the zone outside to the outside zone, then the logistics company cannot acting as an importer. They need to have importer. Okay, and the importer will be the consignee on the custom clearance document. And if the logistics company acting as the importation agent, then the logistics company can be added on the custom declaration sheet as a called operating unit, 经营单位.
Mm-hmm. Then we have time for one last question, and the question is: does the logistic company have to be registered in special custom zones?
The logistic company have to be registered in the special custom zone, yes. And they should have a business license of logistics services. And I recommend that they also should have a distribution import-export services in case they were acting as the importation agent for your customer in China.
Mm-hmm. And the question continues: if you use a bonded logistic park and a free trade zone, can the same logistic company rent warehouse space in both? Or do you need to have two logistic companies in each zone?
Well, normally that you only need one zone, but operating in different zones. It's quite possible.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so this brings us to the end of our today webinar. I would like to thank you very much to Dr. Zhao for giving us the presentation on a really very complicated topic, and we hope that it is not the last webinar which we will have with him here. And I would like you as well thank you for your attention, and if you have further questions, please send it to our Ask the Expert function, which you can find on our websites. Thank you very much for your attention, and see you or not see you. Let's keep in touch and meet at the next webinar session. Goodbye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.